So imagine you were walking along this really quiet stretch of coastline.
Just a completely peaceful morning.
Exactly, yeah.
Huh?
The sun is, it's just starting to peek over the horizon.
Right, getting those long morning shadows.
Yeah, those stretched out shadows across the sand. The tide is gentle. It's rhythmic.
Just a perfect morning stroll.
It really is. You're at Somerton Beach. This is just south of Adelaide in South Australia.
And we are in December, right?
Yes, December 1st, 1948. So you're taking this morning stroll, just taking in the sea air.
Just minding your own business.
Right. And then you look toward the seawall and you see a man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He's just propped up against the concrete, completely motionless.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting. But the first thing that strikes you isn't even that he's unmoving.
What is it then?
Is how he is dressed.
Yeah.
I mean, he is wearing this pristine, perfectly tailored suit.
On a beach.
Right on the sand. It is completely incongruous with the surf and the sand, you know?
Yeah, that doesn't fit at all.
It doesn't. And as you get closer, you realize he isn't sleeping.
He's dead.
He is dead. But, and this is the crazy part, there is absolutely no blood.
No sign of a struggle.
None. His clothes aren't torn.
Right.
He has no wallet, no identification of any kind.
Just completely stripped of who he is.
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
And hidden deep inside this tiny fob pocket in his trousers.
It's a secret pocket.
Yeah, investigators will soon find this tightly rolled scrap of paper.
And what does it say?
It bears a Persian phrase, Tamam Shud.
Which means?
It means, it is ended.
Wow.
I know. So, welcome to the Haunted Podcast, hosted by Gary and Emily. Today on our deep dive, we are plunging headfirst into a 73-year-old labyrinth.
We are looking at the Somerton Man.
We really are. And real quick, if you want to help us unravel more mysteries, smash that like button, subscribe to the Haunted Podcast, and ring the notification bell.
Yeah, you do not want to miss an investigation.
Definitely not. And encourage you all to comment below with your theories as this mystery unfolds. We want to hear from you.
Because we are not just looking at a standard unsolved death today, are we?
Not even close.
Right. I mean, we are unpacking a case that really forces us to examine the absolute limits of forensic science.
Both back in the 1940s and even today.
Exactly. I mean, we are going to explore uncrackable cryptographic codes.
Codes that defy modern artificial intelligence, by the way.
Right. And we have to break down the pharmacology of phantom poisons.
Poisons that literally leave zero trace in the human body.
It's wild. We will also dissect the systematic, almost clinical erasure of a human identity.
Like erasing a footprint.
Yeah, and ultimately we are going to look at how cutting-edge genetic genealogy was deployed to give a ghost his name back.
Which is just phenomenal science.
It really is. We're pulling from pathology reports, Cold War historical analyses, post-war manufacturing data, all of it.
It's a massive scope. But I want to set a parameter for you as you listen today.
A ground rule, basically.
Right. We are going to dig into the grounded theories. You know, the espionage angles, the black market smuggling, the tragic personal narratives.
We will definitely explain the science behind every anomaly we find.
Yes, but I really want you to hold space for the deeply unsettling nature of this case.
Because it gets weird.
It gets so weird. As we lay out the timeline and the physical evidence, the natural explanations are going to start fracturing.
They just don't hold up.
They don't. You are going to hear details that feel so orchestrated, so physically impossible, that it almost feels as though this man was erased from the mortal plane by something we cannot quantify.
Like a genuine paranormal event.
Exactly. Leaving behind a puzzle specifically designed to mock whoever tried to solve it. Keep that tension in your mind.
That tension is entirely justified, especially when you look at the raw data of the crime scene itself.
Right. Let's start there. The physical context of how he was found.
Because it sets the stage for every single contradiction that follows.
Let's look at the morning of December 1st. The body is officially discovered at 6:30 a.m., right?
Right. He is lying across from the crippled children's home, right on the corner of the Esplanade and Bickford Terrace.
And the positioning of his body is the first major anomaly.
It really is. I mean, his back and his head are resting against the seawall.
Okay, leaning back.
Yeah, but his legs are fully extended straight out in front of him.
Just stretched out.
Stretched out. And his feet are neatly, almost politely crossed at the ankles.
Which is an incredibly passive posture.
Completely passive. I mean, there is zero disturbance in the sand around him.
So no thrashing around.
None. Nothing to suggest a seizure, a fight, or even a medical emergency.
And to compound that peaceful image, there was something else, right?
Yeah, there was an unlit, half-smoked cigarette.
Resting where?
resting perfectly on the right collar of his coat.
Okay, I want you to really think about the physics of that for a second.
It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't. If you are experiencing a catastrophic medical event or dying of poison, your body rebels.
You lose muscle control entirely.
Exactly. You do not recline, cross your feet politely, and let a cigarette balance perfectly on your collar as your heart stops.
It's like a set designer arranged a mannequin on a stage.
Yes. It feels incredibly posed.
Yeah.
Like someone posed a ghost.
And the pocket inventory reinforces that exact feeling of a curated scene.
Oh, the pockets. Walk us through what they found.
Well, the police documented an incredibly specific, yet utterly baffling, list of items on his person.
Let's hear it.
Item 1, an unused second-class rail ticket from Adelaide to Henley Beach.
Unused. Oh.
Item 2, a city bus ticket, which may or may not have been used, for a route that went toward Glenelg.
Right. Different directions there.
Very different. Item 3, a narrow aluminum comb, notably manufactured in the United States.
We'll definitely come back to the American depot.
For sure. Item 4, a half-empty pack of juicy fruit chewing gum.
Classic.
Item 5, a quarter-full box of Bryant and May matches.
Okay, standard stuff so far.
But then we get to item 6, the one that really stands out.
The cigarettes.
Yes, an Army Club cigarette packet.
But
inside that packet were 7 cigarettes of a completely different, considerably more expensive brand.
a brand called Kensitas.
Exactly.
Okay, let's pull that apart because it is just a psychological goldmine.
It really is. Where do you want to start?
First, you have an unused train ticket to Henley Beach, but he is found dead on Somerton Beach.
Right, entirely different destinations.
So his intended destination was altered, or he never intended to use the ticket at all?
A misdirection, maybe?
Maybe. Then you have the American goods.
Right, the comb and the gum.
In 1948, Australia was still heavily under post-war rationing.
Things were tight.
Very tight. American items like juicy fruit gum or a specialized aluminum comb weren't impossible to get, but they carried a very specific weight.
They implied a connection to American servicemen.
Or the black market, or international travel.
The aluminum comb is particularly interesting to me.
Why is that?
Because aluminum manufacturing was largely redirected for the war effort.
Ah, right. Building planes and stuff.
Exactly. So having a civilian aluminum comb in 1948 points to a very specific type of post-war manufacturing.
Which was heavily centralized in the U.S.
Correct.
But look, the cigarette packet is the detail that sticks with me the most.
The Kensitas in the Army Club pack.
Yes. Why do that? If you are frugal, you buy cheap cigarettes and maybe put them in a nice case to look wealthy.
That's the normal way to do it.
Right. But here, he has expensive cigarettes hidden inside a cheaper brand's packaging.
He's backwards.
It is. Does he not want people asking to bum a high-end cigarette off him?
I mean, that's possible.
Or is it a metaphor for the whole case? A high-value asset hidden in a mundane, everyday wrapper.
That's a fascinating way to look at it.
It suggests someone who is very accustomed to concealing realities.
It implies duality, absolutely. But, the timeline of how he ended up on that seawall is where the physical impossibility really takes root.
But the timeline is where my brain starts to break. Let's get into what the witnesses saw.
Well, when the police canvassed the area, they found multiple witnesses who placed him at that exact spot the evening prior, November 30.
So he was there the night before?
Yes. Around 7 p.m., a couple walking along the beach saw a man matching his description lying against the wall.
Doing what?
They watched him extend his right arm upward to its fullest extent.
Just reaching up into the air.
Yeah, and then he just let it drop limply back down to his side.
Which, that could be a guy stretching as he wakes up, right?
Sure, could be.
Or it could be the final involuntary neurological spasm of a dying man.
And that is the critical debate right there. Because the next set of witnesses observed him between 7:30 and 8:00 p.m.
This is a little bit later.
Right. And the streetlights had come on by this point, casting a clear light directly on the seawall.
So they had a good view of him.
A great view. This second couple observed him for a full 30 minutes.
30 minutes is a long time to watch someone.
It is. And they stated definitively that he did not change his position during that entire window.
He just stayed completely still.
Yes. But the detail they noted to police, the thing they specifically discussed with each other at the time, was about the insects.
Oh, the mosquitoes.
Right. The evening was warm and the beach was swarming with mosquitoes.
As beaches often are.
Yeah, and they were baffled that this man was not reacting at all to the mosquitoes biting his face and hands.
He didn't swat them away?
He didn't swat, he didn't flinch, nothing.
Wow.
They ultimately assumed he must be heavily intoxicated, dead drunk, so they walked past without checking on him.
I have to ask you guys, have you ever been swarmed by mosquitoes near a body of water in the summer?
Mm-hmm. It's miserable.
You cannot simply ignore it. The body has deeply ingrained autonomic reflexes to protect against biting insects.
You'll twitch even if you are fast asleep.
Exactly. If he was not reacting, he was not just asleep.
He was in a profound, deep, comatose state.
Entirely uncoupled from external stimuli. Or, honestly, he was already dead by 7:30 p.m.
But see, if we assume he was dead at 7:30 p.m., we run into a major environmental contradiction. If he died that early in the evening, his body sat on that beach for 11 hours before being discovered at 6:30 the next morning.
11 hours.
11 hours of coastal wind, tidal shifts, and temperature drops.
Man.
Yet that half-smoked cigarette remained perfectly balanced on his collar the entire night.
See, that is what I mean when I say it defies logic. The wind coming off the ocean alone would have blown that cigarette away in 5 minutes.
Exactly.
The only way it stays there is if it was placed there much later, closer to the morning discovery.
Which brings in the later witness reports, which are honestly chilling.
Yeah, let's talk about the stairs.
Right. One witness reported looking down from the stairs that lead to the beach that night.
And what did they see?
They saw another man standing over the sleeping figure, just staring down at him.
Just looming over him in the dark.
Yeah. And even more compelling, though, I should note it surfaced a decade later in 1959.
Carrying story.
Yes. Another witness came forward claiming that on the night of November 30, he and 3 companions were on Somerton Beach.
Okay, 4 people.
And they witnessed a well-dressed man carrying another man on his shoulders along the sand.
Literally a fireman's carry on the beach.
Right, heading toward the exact spot where the body was ultimately found.
So, carrying a body on his shoulders, if we trust that memory, and I know relying on a memory from 11 years prior is historically dangerous.
It is. Memory is fallible.
But if it's true, it completely validates the theory that the beach was a staging ground.
A drop site.
Right. It explains the pristine clothes. She wasn't walking in the sand. He was carried over it.
It makes a lot of sense.
But how do you reconcile a man being carried and dumped with the first couple who saw him raise his arm at 7 p.m.?
The timeline gets messy.
Was he dumped there alive, dosed with a paralytic, and left to die in public?
To understand what actually happened to him on that beach, we have to look beneath the pristine exterior.
The autopsy.
Yes. The autopsy reveals a reality that is violently at odds with his peaceful posture.
Okay, let's get into the medical details. Who did the autopsy?
Dr. John Burton Cleland, a highly experienced pathologist, conducted it with Dr. John Dwyer.
And what were their initial thoughts?
Well, they estimated the man was in his early 40s, and the first thing they noted was his extraordinary physical condition.
He was in good shape.
Incredible shape. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, gray eyes, fair to ginger hair graying at the temples. He was muscular and deeply fit.
But his legs, right. The lower body anatomy is where the physical profile gets incredibly niche.
The lower extremities were fascinating to the pathologists.
What was so weird about them?
His big and little toes met in a very distinct, pronounced wedge shape.
A wedge shape, like a triangle.
Sort of, yes. And this is not a natural resting shape for a human foot.
So it's an acquired trait?
Exactly. It's a biological adaptation caused by prolonged, intense pressure over years.
What kind of pressure?
You typically only see this in professional ballet dancers who spend years on point.
Wow, ballet dancers. What else?
Or in individuals who wear extremely tight, pointed boots for long periods, like certain types of horsemen or drovers.
And his calf muscles supported that exact theory, didn't they?
They absolutely did. The calf muscles were exceptionally pronounced and sat unusually high on the leg.
Meaning what, biomechanically?
Again, this is a response to spending a massive amount of time on the balls of the feet.
So constantly being on your toes.
Yes. It requires the calf muscle to contract and pull upward continuously. Over time, that actually alters the muscle belly's physical placement.
So you have a man who looks like a European businessman in a tailored suit.
But he has the biomechanics of a premier danseur or a lifelong equestrian.
That is such a specific physical fingerprint. But the internal autopsy is what really breaks this case wide open.
The internal examination was a scene of absolute devastation.
Walk me through it, organ by organ.
Okay. Dr. Dwyer found acute systemic destruction. Let's start at the top.
Okay.
The pharynx, which is the back of the throat, was deeply congested and swollen.
Swollen throat.
Moving down, the esophagus was coated in a whitening of the superficial mucosal layers.
And the chemical burn.
Sort of, yeah. With a distinct raw patch of ulceration right in the middle of it.
Ouch.
Then his stomach. It was deeply congested and filled with blood.
Internal bleeding in the stomach.
Massive bleeding, which had mixed into his last meal.
Which was what?
A Cornish pasty, eaten roughly 3 to 4 hours before death.
Okay, let me stop you right there. Bleeding into the stomach and ulcerated throat. A Cornish pasty is just a standard baked pastry filled with meat and potatoes.
Right, comfort food.
Exactly. Nothing in a pasty naturally causes your stomach to hemorrhage.
No, definitely not. And the destruction went further than the stomach.
What else?
Both of his kidneys were severely congested, but the spleen was the most alarming organ to the pathologist.
What was wrong with the spleen?
Well, a normal human spleen is relatively small. It acts as a filter for the blood, and it's a key part of the immune system.
Right.
The Somerton Man spleen was strikingly enlarged. It was measuring roughly 3 times its normal, healthy size.
3 times. Listen, for a spleen to triple in size, the body has to be mounting an aggressive, catastrophic immune response.
A desperate response.
We're talking massive toxicity or a fulminant infection.
Furthermore, when they put his liver tissue under a microscope, they found that the centers of his liver lobules were completely destroyed.
Explain liver lobules.
The liver is your body's primary filtration and detoxification plant, right?
Yeah.
The lobules are the microscopic building blocks of that filtration system.
Okay.
They were essentially necrotic. They were melting from the inside out.
Man, just imagine the pain of that. Your throat is burning, your stomach is bleeding out, your liver is failing rapidly, and your spleen is swelling massively.
It would be agonizing.
That level of organ failure causes severe convulsions, intense abdominal agony, and violent biological purging.
Usually, yes.
You do not suffer that kind of internal trauma and then cross your feet politely at the ankles.
You really do.
You curl into a fetal position. You thrash around. The disconnect between his internal trauma and his external posture is terrifying.
It's paradoxical.
It means someone or something controlled his physical state while his internal organs were being utterly destroyed.
And that led the pathologists to immediately suspect a highly sophisticated poison.
Because it wasn't natural.
Not at all. So the coroner brought in Professor Cedric Stanton Hicks.
Who was he?
A renowned professor of physiology and pharmacology, and the atmosphere during his testimony at the inquest was incredibly tense.
I can imagine.
Professor Hicks testified about the presence of 2 highly toxic, incredibly difficult to trace drugs.
Did he name them in court?
He actually refused to say their names out loud.
Really?
Yeah. He wrote the names on a slip of paper and handed it directly to the coroner.
Why the secrecy?
Because they were deemed too dangerous to state on the public record.
Because it was 1948, right? The dawn of the Cold War.
Exactly.
And handing out the names of untraceable poisons in a public forum was a massive security risk.
A handbook for assassins, basically.
But we eventually learned what was on that paper, though.
We did. Digitalis and uabane.
Okay, we need to explain exactly how these work, because this isn't arsenic. This isn't cyanide.
No, this is a very different mechanism of death.
Talk us through it. What are they?
Digitalis and uabane are cardinalide-type cardiac glycosides.
That's a mouthful. Where do they come from?
Digitalis is naturally derived from the foxglove plant, which is pretty common.
Okay, and uabane?
Uabane comes from the seeds of a specific African climbing shrub.
So they are plant-derived?
Yes. And interestingly, in modern cardiology, in microscopic, meticulously controlled doses, they can actually be used to treat congestive heart failure.
Wait, how does a deadly poison treat heart failure?
It comes down to cellular mechanisms. These drugs work by inhibiting something called the sodium-potassium pump in the cells of the heart muscle.
Okay, I'm following.
Normally, this pump moves sodium out of the cell and brings potassium in.
Just standard cell maintenance.
Right. But by blocking this pump, sodium builds up inside the cell.
But the cell gets stressed?
Yes. The body tries to fix this imbalance by using a different pump that trades sodium for calcium.
Okay, so now calcium is flooding into the heart muscle cells.
Exactly. And calcium is the trigger that tells a muscle to contract.
So in a failing heart.
In a failing heart, a tiny bit of extra calcium helps the heart squeeze a little harder, improving circulation.
That makes sense. But in a massive dose.
At a massive dose, it is a catastrophic overload. The calcium floods the cells unstoppably.
So the heart just keeps squeezing.
The heart muscle contracts with absolute violence, but the electrical signals misfire because the potassium levels are ruined.
It essentially short circuits.
It causes a fatal arrhythmia. The heart effectively squeezes itself to death and just stops.
Wow. And why are they the perfect murder weapons for a spy in 1948?
Because they metabolize incredibly rapidly and require a minuscule dose to be fatal.
Like, how small?
A fraction of a milligram can induce cardiac arrest. By the time the autopsy was performed, the active compound would have completely broken down,
Leaving virtually no chemical trace for standard 1940s toxicology screens to find.
None at all. Professor Hicks noted that a massive dose would trigger the exact internal congestion, the bleeding, and the liver destruction they observed.
All while rendering the blood perfectly clean to a toxicologist.
Exactly.
But there is a massive biological failsafe that throws a wrench into this poison theory, isn't there?
A huge wrench, yes.
If you ingest a massive dose of cardiac glycosides, your body recognizes the toxicity almost immediately.
It knows it's being poisoned.
Right. And the universal symptom, the thing that happens to almost every single person who is poisoned this way, is violent, uncontrollable vomiting.
The body's immediate reflex is to purge the stomach to get the toxin out before it absorbs.
Exactly. Yet there was absolutely no evidence of vomiting at the scene.
None. Not on his pristine suit, not on his face, not in the sand around him, nothing.
So weird.
Professor Hicks had to concede that while it is technically possible for an individual to avoid vomiting with a rapidly fatal dose, it is highly, highly improbable.
The absence of this biological indicator makes the poison theory very difficult to finalize.
It leaves a shadow of a doubt.
So if it's not poison, what is it? A sudden, aggressive biological agent we don't even have a name for?
Or a poison administered in a way that bypassed the stomach's purging reflex entirely?
Like an injection. And this is where the investigation hits a massive wall of missing information.
The archives.
Yes, the original 1948 and 1949 autopsy reports, the primary documents detailing the exact destruction of this man's internal organs, have vanished.
Completely gone.
They are just entirely missing from the police and state archives.
The disappearance of primary source documents always fuels the fire of conspiracy.
Of course it does. You have a dead man with no name, killed by a poison that leaves no trace, and the paperwork proving how his organs failed just gets up and walks out of the archive.
It looks really bad.
It screams government cover-up. It suggests an intelligence agency stepped in, realized someone used a covert biological weapon, and scrubbed the file.
That's the spy theory in a nutshell.
But, I also have to push back on my own conspiracy brain here.
Let's hear the grounded take.
We're talking about 1948 record keeping. The files were likely paper folders, just stuffed into filing cabinets in a basement somewhere.
Very true.
Isn't it just as likely that an overworked clerk misfiled it? Or it was thrown away during a basement cleanout 30 years later?
It happens all the time in historical research.
We love to ascribe malice to what is often just bureaucratic incompetence.
That is the eternal struggle of historical true crime. We have to separate intentional erasure from administrative decay.
Exactly. So because the body offered no identification and the internal chemistry was a dead end, the police were forced to trace his physical footprint backward.
They needed to find his belongings.
Right. And 6 weeks pass. It is now January 14th, 1949.
And they finally get a break.
Staff at the Adelaide Railway Station cloakroom contact the authorities
regarding a brown suitcase that had been abandoned.
And the timeline of this suitcase is what definitively links it to our ghost on the beach.
The timing is perfect. It was checked into the cloakroom just after 11:00 a.m. on November 30.
That is the exact same day he is seen lying on Somerton Beach that evening.
Same day. So the police secure the suitcase and they open it.
And what do they find?
The contents provide a deeply confusing cross-section of a life.
Normal stuff.
Some of it, yeah. It contained mundane travel items, a red checked dressing gown, size 7, red felt slippers, pajamas, shaving gear, and underpants.
Standard luggage.
But interwoven with the mundane was a bizarre collection of tools.
This is where it gets weird. Walk us through the tools.
Okay, they found an electrician's screwdriver.
Okay, maybe he's an electrician.
They found a standard table knife, but it had been deliberately cut down and filed into a sharp, specialized instrument.
Like a shiz.
Sort of, but more like a precision tool. They also found a pair of scissors where the points had been carefully and purposefully sharpened.
Okay, sharpened scissors. What else?
They found a small square of zinc, which investigators believed was used as a custom protective sheath for that sharpened knife.
A custom sheath.
And they found a stenciling brush.
Okay, what does a guy in a tailored suit need a stenciling brush for? Are we talking arts and crafts here?
No, this was a heavy-duty industrial tool.
Like for painting?
This specific type of stenciling brush was commonly used by third officers on merchant ships.
Really?
Its primary function was stenciling shipping labels and destination codes onto large wooden cargo crates.
Wow. So immediately you have a physical connection to maritime shipping, trade routes, or the merchant navy.
A very specific skill set.
You have these sharpened, customized tools that suggest a very specific trade, or perhaps the need to quickly break into or alter something.
Like tampering with cargo.
Exactly. But the clothes in the suitcase are what really sent the police spinning.
The clothing offered a geographic origin point that was thousands of miles away from Australia.
Let's talk about the coat.
Inside the suitcase was a light brown coat. It featured a front gusset and a very specific type of decorative stitching called feather stitching.
Feather stitching.
The police brought in textile and tailoring experts to analyze it.
Yeah, what did they say?
These experts confirmed that the highly specialized machinery required to produce that specific feather stitching was only available in the United States at that time.
Only the U.S.
Australian manufacturing simply did not have the capability to produce that garment in 1948.
So the coat is American. The comb in his pocket is American.
Yep.
In 1948, commercial transatlantic and transpacific flights are in their infancy.
It wasn't easy to travel.
Moving goods from the U.S. to Australia implied a level of wealth, a connection to the military, or access to post-war smuggling networks.
Exactly. But tracing the coat proved impossible because someone had surgically sterilized the suitcase.
Sterilized it how?
Almost every single manufacturer label, sizing tag, and brand identifier had been meticulously cut, ripped, or snipped out of the clothing.
Just like the clothes he was wearing on the beach.
Exactly the same.
Someone sat down and methodically severed the physical history of these garments.
However, they made a mistake, or they left a deliberate clue.
The thread.
Yes. Amidst the sanitized clothing, police found a thread card. It contained a specific brand of orange wax thread made by Barber.
And this thread wasn't Australian either, right?
No, this thread was not available for purchase anywhere in Australia. It was an imported, highly unusual material.
And how did it link to the body?
When police compared it to the clothing on the body, it was a microscopic, perfect match to the thread used to repair a tear in the lining of the dead man's trouser pocket.
Wow. That is the golden thread. That proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the Somerton Man owned this suitcase.
It completely secured the connection. But the tags they didn't remove are what launched an international manhunt.
Wait, they missed some tags.
They found 3 items with names on them.
Let's hear them.
A tie with the name T. Keene printed on it.
Okay, T. Keene.
A laundry bag bearing the name Keene, and a singlet and undershirt with the name Keene spelled without the E at the end.
3 items, all pointing to the name Keene.
They also found 3 dry cleaning marks stamped into the fabric of the clothes.
Which were?
Number 11717, 43937, and 30537.
So, if you're a detective in 1949, you're popping champagne at this point. You have a name. T. Keene. Case closed, right?
You would certainly think so. The police immediately launched a massive search.
Did they find him?
They queried every missing persons database in Australia. They sent the name to Scotland Yard in the UK. They contacted American authorities.
Surveying all the bases.
They searched for T. Keene, Thomas Keene, Timothy Keene, any variation thereof in every English-speaking country on Earth.
And the result?
0.
Nothing.
No one named Keene, matching the Somerton Man's physical description, was missing anywhere.
What about the dry cleaning numbers? Surely those are traceable.
They circulated those numbers to every dry cleaner in the country.
Because dry cleaners use those stamps to ensure clothes get back to the right customer.
Right. A nationwide circulation turned up absolutely nothing.
That is baffling.
It was as if his clothes were processed by a phantom dry cleaner that didn't exist on any commercial registry.
Which brings us back to the psychology of the tags.
The red herring theory.
Yes. Why cut out 90% of the tags, but purposely leave T. Keene?
The police concluded it was a deliberate red herring.
It makes sense. If you are erasing your identity, you don't accidentally leave your name on your tie.
No, you leave a fake name.
To send the police on a wild goose chase across the globe while your real identity remains a secret, it feels so calculated.
And this is exactly why the spy folklore surrounds this case.
Because of this methodical erasure.
The prevailing theory, driven by the intense paranoia of the early Cold War, was that he was a Soviet operative.
And his handlers stripped the labels.
His handlers, or perhaps he himself, stripped the labels to prevent his geographic movements from being tracked through his wardrobe.
But let's ground this for a second. While the spy theory is incredibly cinematic, there is a much more mundane, deeply human explanation for missing clothing tags in the 1940s, isn't there?
There really is. When we look at the history of mid-century fashion and post-war economics, the missing tags become way less sinister.
Explain that.
First, clothing tags in the 1940s were often large, stiff, and made of highly irritating, scratchy materials.
Like burlap on your neck.
Exactly. It was a remarkably common practice for individuals, particularly those with sensory sensitivities, to simply take a pair of scissors and cut the tags out the moment they brought the clothes home.
Just general annoyance. I mean, people still do that today.
They do. Furthermore, Australia was still heavily impacted by post-war rationing in 1948. Fabric was incredibly scarce.
So new clothes were hard to get.
Very hard. Consequently, the secondhand clothing market was booming. It was entirely normal for middle-class individuals to purchase secondhand clothing.
Okay, I see where you're going.
When you buy a coat that has another man's name stitched into the collar, what is the first thing you do?
You remove the tag with his name on it.
You cut it out. So the missing labels might not be the hallmark of international espionage at all.
They might just be the personal habit of a man who hated scratchy collars and bought secondhand clothes.
Exactly. It's a very practical explanation.
I love that explanation because it reminds us that historical mysteries are often just the result of ordinary human behavior viewed through a lens of suspicion.
We project our own mysteries onto it.
But having said that, the spy theory gets a massive injection of adrenaline when we look at the testimony from the Strathmore Hotel.
Oh, the hotel testimony's fascinating.
The Strathmore Hotel was located directly opposite the Adelaide railway station where the suitcase was found.
Right across the street.
Ina Harvey, a receptionist there, came forward with a story that feels straight out of an Ian Fleming novel.
Her account is absolutely chilling.
What did she say?
She reported that a strange English-speaking man checked into either room 21 or room 23 for a few days right around the time the Somerton Man arrived in Adelaide.
Just a mysterious guest.
And crucially, this mysterious guest checked out on the morning of November 30.
The exact same morning the Somerton Man checks his suitcase into the railway station across the street.
The exact same morning, but it is what the guest was carrying that caught the staff's attention.
What was it?
He was carrying a small black case described as resembling a doctor's bag or a musician's instrument case.
Okay.
When a hotel employee managed to get a glance inside this case, they didn't find standard travel items like clothes or a shaving kit.
What did they find?
They found a specific object they described as resembling a, quote, needle.
A needle in a black case.
A needle.
Possessed by a stranger, checking out on the exact day our victim abandons his luggage and ends up dead on a beach from a suspected, untraceable, injected poison.
The connections are impossible to ignore.
You have to admit, it is a profoundly compelling piece of circumstantial evidence. If you are an assassin administering digitalis, you carry it in a syringe.
It is entirely circumstantial, but it is the kind of circumstance that anchors the espionage theory so deeply into the public consciousness that it becomes very difficult to dismiss.
I mean, we have a pristine corpse, a scientifically impossible timeline, necrotic internal organs with missing files, a suitcase full of sharpened merchant marine tools, and clothes scrubbed of their history.
It is already the ultimate cold case.
It is. But we have to move to the single most bizarre clue in the history of forensic science.
The scrap of paper.
The clue that elevates this from a murder mystery to a cultural legend. We need to unpack Tamam Shud and the haunted book.
Right. Because the suitcase provided no definitive identity, the pathologists conducted a secondary microscopic examination of the clothing recovered from the body.
They searched him again.
They did. And it was during this search that they found a tiny, hidden fob pocket.
What exactly is a fob pocket for those who don't wear 1940s suits?
A fob pocket is a small compartment stitched inside the main pocket of a pair of trousers. It was originally designed in the 19th century to hold a pocket watch securely.
Oh, okay.
And deeply hidden inside this tiny pocket, they find a scrap of paper.
How big was it?
No larger than a couple of inches, tightly rolled into a tiny cylinder.
And when they unrolled it?
When they carefully unrolled it, they found two words printed in an elegant, distinct typeface. Tamam Shud.
The police must have been so confused.
They had no idea what it meant. They brought in public library officials and language experts to look at it.
And what did the experts say?
They immediately identified it as Persian, It translates to "it is ended" or finished.
Finished.
And more importantly, the librarians identified the specific literary source of the paper.
It came from a book.
Yes. These are the final closing words of a very specific, historically significant book of poetry, the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
I want to talk about the Rubaiyat for a second because the thematic resonance here is heavy.
It really is a profound text.
The Rubaiyat is a collection of poems written by an 11th century Persian polymath, translated into English in the 19th century by Edward Fitzgerald.
And it was very popular in the early 20th century.
Very. But the overarching philosophy of the book is fatalistic. It is about embracing the present moment, drinking wine, and living fully, because death is inevitable, absolute, and eternal.
It's very focused on mortality.
Right. There is no afterlife in the poetry. There is only the beautiful, melancholic end.
The thematic weight cannot be overstated in this context.
Carrying that specific phrase, "it is ended," torn from a book about the finality of death, suggests a deeply specific psychological profile.
It implies a man who was acutely, perhaps comfortably, aware of his impending death.
Which strongly supports the theory of a ritualistic, meticulously planned suicide.
It does. Alternatively, in the espionage framework, it acts as a calling card.
Like a signature.
A psychological signature left by an assassin to signify the successful termination of an asset. It is ended.
Wow, that's dark. Whatever the motive, the presence of this scrap meant there was a physical book out there with a missing page.
Yes, the parent book.
The police realized that finding the book could lead them directly to the person who tore the page.
So they went public.
They photographed the scrap and blasted it across the national press, launching an Australia-wide manhunt for a mutilated book of poetry.
And then months pass. The trail goes entirely cold.
As it always seems to do in this case.
But then, in July 1949, a man walks into a local police station and places a book on the front desk.
The book.
It is an incredibly rare 1859 New Zealand edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
And when they open it?
The police open it to the back cover. The final page, bearing the words Tamam Shud, has been neatly torn out.
And when they test the paper, do they know for sure it's the right one?
The paper scrap from the dead man's pocket was examined under a microscope alongside the torn edge in the book.
The moment of truth.
The paper fibers, the tear pattern, the typography, it was a perfect, incontrovertible match. This was the exact book.
This is where the timeline completely shatters reality for me.
The timeline of the book is the strangest part of all.
The police ask the man, "Where did you get this?" And the story he tells is absurd.
What did he say?
He tells them that he found this highly rare edition of a Persian poetry book simply tossed into the back seat of his car.
Just thrown through the window.
Yes. His car was parked in Glenelg, a coastal suburb just a short walk up the beach from Somerton. He had left the car, parked, unlocked, with the windows down.
And the date he found it is the crucial data point here.
What date was it?
He stated that he found the book in his car around November 20.
November 20. I want everyone to think about the sheer impossibility of that timeline.
Let's lay it out.
A rare book materializes in a stranger's unlocked car on November 20. The Somerton Man is found dead on the nearby beach on December 4th, carrying the piece of paper torn from that exact book.
It's an 11-day gap.
Does that mean the Somerton Man tore the page, threw the book into a random car window, and then wandered around Adelaide for 10 days before dying on the beach?
That doesn't make much sense.
Or did someone else plant the book? It feels precognitive. It feels like the pieces of the puzzle were being placed on the board before the game even started. It defies linear logic.
It introduces an element of chaotic orchestration. It really does. But the physical book was not just a literary artifact.
No, it wasn't.
When police examined it, it became a vessel for encrypted secrets.
The code.
Yes. It provided the first tangible physical link to the Somerton Man's network. When forensic investigators examined the back cover of the recovered Rubaiyat under ultraviolet light,
they found something invisible to the naked eye.
They discovered faint indentations in the cardboard.
Because someone had used the book as a hard surface to write on. They placed a piece of paper over the book, wrote a message, and pressed hard enough with their pen to emboss the letters into the cover.
Exactly. And when they carefully traced the indentations, they revealed 5 lines of capital English letters.
What did they say?
The second line was crossed out with a firm strike. It appeared to be a cipher. It read, WRGOABABD, followed by MLIAOI, which was the crossed out line.
Okay.
Then WTBI, MPANETP, MLIABOAAAQC, and finally ITTMTSAMSTGAB.
It looks like absolute gibberish.
It does, but it was structured sequentially, like a deliberate encrypted transmission.
So military intelligence took a crack at it. Right.
Naval intelligence, civilian cryptographers, mathematicians, everyone attempted to break it in 1949, and they all failed.
And the effort hasn't stopped, has it?
Not at all. In the modern era, researchers have applied immense computational power to these 5 lines. They have used advanced statistical analysis and support vector machine algorithms.
Okay, let's break down how an AI actually looks at a code like this. What is a support vector machine, or SVM, doing?
Think of a support vector machine like a highly advanced multidimensional sorting tool.
Okay, sort of sorting data.
Imagine you have a massive table covered in thousands of different fruits, and you need to draw a line separating the apples from the oranges based on their weight and color.
The SVM draws that line.
Right. The SVM calculates the optimal boundary line between those groups.
How does that apply to cryptography?
In cryptography, researchers feed the AI massive databases of French and English texts.
Okay, teaching it the language.
Exactly. The AI analyzes the frequency of letters, the sequence patterns, and the statistical likelihood of certain letters following others.
Like Q is usually followed by U.
Precisely. It is trying to draw a mathematical boundary that says this string of letters belongs to the English language cluster, or this string is purely random.
They also used Levenshtein distance calculations, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
I find this fascinating. Think of Levenshtein distance like a game of telephone, but for data.
It's a great way to measure variations.
If I have the word cat and I want to turn it into dog, the algorithm measures the exact number of single-letter edits, insertions, deletions, or substitutions required to make that change.
Step by step.
Right. Change C to D, change A to O, change T to G, dog. 3 steps. The AI uses this to see if the cipher letters are just slightly misspelled abbreviations of common phrases.
That is a perfect analogy. They were trying to determine if it was a substitution cipher where A equals G and B equals Q, or if it was an initialism.
Meaning just the first letters of words in a sentence.
Exactly. Despite throwing the full weight of modern artificial intelligence and statistical modeling at these 5 lines, the code remains entirely unbroken.
Why is it so hard for modern computers to crack 5 lines of text?
The primary issue is something called the curse of dimensionality.
Meaning?
The text is simply too short. There isn't enough data for frequency analysis to find a repeating pattern.
So there's not enough context to anchor the math.
Right. Yet the mathematical structure of the letters suggests it is absolutely not random. It is a perfect, uncrackable, cryptographic anomaly.
But the code wasn't the only thing embossed on the back of the book, was it?
No, it wasn't. There was a phone number.
And that number didn't lead to a spy ring in Moscow. It led to a house just a few blocks away.
The police traced the unlisted phone number, X3239. It belonged to a house located just 400 meters from where the body was found on Somerton Beach.
Literally a 5-minute walk.
Yes. The number belonged to a 27-year-old nurse named Jo Thompson, who was born Jo Harkness.
Also known as Justin.
Right. Because of the intense media scrutiny, the police protected her identity in the official files by referring to her with the pseudonym Justin.
I want to put you in the shoes of the detectives for a minute. You have an unidentified corpse killed by a stealth poison. You have a rare book thrown into a random car containing an unbreakable spy code.
It's a wild case.
And embossed on that book is the phone number of a nurse who lives walking distance from the body.
So you go knock on her door.
You knock on her door. The tension in that interrogation must have been suffocating.
The interview was profoundly strange. Detective Paul Lawson handled it.
And he brought something with him, didn't he?
He did. He had previously commissioned a plaster death cast of the Somerton Man's head and torso.
A plaster cast of a dead body.
Yes. Because bodies decompose and photography in 1948 didn't capture three-dimensional nuance, they made a physical bust to preserve his likeness for future identification.
And Lawson brought this to the nurse's house.
Lawson brought this plaster cast to Jo Thompson's house. He pulled it out and showed her the lifeless face of the mystery man found down her street.
How does she react to seeing that?
According to Lawson's detailed reports, her physiological reaction was extreme.
Extreme how?
She looked as if she were about to completely faint. All the blood rushed from her face. She turned her eyes away and adamantly, forcefully refused to ever look at the plaster cast again during the entire course of the interview.
Listen, you do not have that kind of visceral biological reaction, the near fainting, the refusal to look, unless you are confronted with massive trauma or shocking recognition.
It's a textbook shock response.
She knew him. Her body betrayed her before she could even speak.
Her physical reaction heavily implied recognition, you're right, but verbally she completely denied knowing him.
She stuck to her story.
She maintained she had never seen the man before in her life. However, she did admit to one crucial detail.
The book.
Yes. She admitted that she previously owned a highly rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam.
What did she say happened to it?
She claimed that during World War II, in 1945, while she was working at a hospital in Sydney, she had given her copy of the book to an Australian Army lieutenant named Alf Boxall.
Boom. The detectives must have thought, we've cracked it.
They thought it was over.
The dead man is Alf Boxall. He served in the military, which explains the physical fitness. He had the book. He came to Adelaide to see the nurse. Something went wrong, and he ended up dead on the beach.
That was their exact working theory. The police confidently accessed military records, tracked down Alf Boxall's file, and dispatched detectives to Sydney to officially confirm his death and close the case.
But when the detectives arrived in Sydney, the narrative completely collapsed.
They found Alf Boxall completely alive.
Alive?
Yes, working a mundane job at a bus depot.
Imagine the shock of those detectives.
It gets worse. When they interviewed Boxall, they asked him about the book. Boxall casually reached into his belongings and produced his copy of the Rubaiyat.
The one she gave him.
The exact copy Joe Thompson had given him years prior. It was completely intact. The final page bearing the words Tamam Shud was still perfectly bound in the spine.
I really want to start and calculate the statistical impossibility of this situation.
It's mind-boggling.
You have a dead man on a beach carrying a scrap from a rare New Zealand translation of a Persian poetry book. A stranger finds this exact rare book with the torn page in his unlocked car.
Right.
The book has the phone number of a nurse. The nurse says she gave a copy of this exact rare book to a soldier, and the soldier is alive, holding his own intact copy.
It's too much coincidence.
So within this tiny, geographically isolated web of people, there are two incredibly rare copies of this obscure translation circulating. The odds of that happening by pure coincidence are astronomical.
It is a statistical nightmare that forces cryptographers to reconsider the very nature of the unbreakable code.
Explain that. Why does having two copies matter for the code?
If there are multiple copies of the exact same rare book being passed between interconnected individuals, it strongly suggests the book itself is a cipher key, specifically a one-time pad.
Explain the one-time pad to me. How does a book become a code?
Think of a one-time pad like a two-part lock. I have a highly specific, custom-made key, and you have an identical copy of that key. We can send a locked box back and forth endlessly, but the only way to open it is if we are both using the exact same keys.
So the book is the key.
In cryptography, the key is a sequence of random letters or numbers. If I want to send you a message, I use my book to scramble the letters. The only way you can unscramble it is if you have the exact same edition of the book.
Down to the page numbers and typos.
Down to the punctuation marks on page 42 to reverse the math. It is the only encryption method mathematically proven to be entirely unbreakable as long as the key is never reused.
And Soviet espionage networks famously used obscure books as their one-time pads.
They absolutely did, which perfectly aligns with the Cold War spy theory.
But the other side of the coin is much simpler.
Yeah.
Some skeptics suggest the code is just horse racing bets.
Ah, the racing theory.
The Somerton Man, as we will discuss in a bit, liked to bet on horses. Could the letters just be the initials of horses running at the local track?
It is a persistent theory, but linguists who analyze the sequential flow of the letters argue it doesn't fit the pattern of racing shorthand.
Too strict.
It leans heavily toward an initialism. It could be another verse of the Rubaiyat itself, written out from memory by a dying man, using just the first letters of each word.
Like a final poem before death.
Right, but because it is so short, neither the AI nor human linguists can prove it definitively.
This web of phantom poisons, unbreakable one-time pads, and fainting nurses is enough to drive anyone crazy.
It drove the investigators crazy because the trail went completely cold.
For decades.
For decades, the ghost of Somerton Beach refused to rest, but the physical evidence offered nothing new.
We have to fast forward through years of false leads, conspiracy theories, and silent witnesses to arrive at a modern scientific breakthrough.
Indeed. Following the exhaustive, global, and ultimately fruitless initial investigation, the authorities had to put the body to rest.
In 1949, the Somerton Man was buried at West Terrace Cemetery in Adelaide.
The state was prepared to bury him in a pauper's mass grave, actually.
But someone stopped that, right?
Yes, a group called the Grandstand Bookmakers Association stepped in and funded a private burial.
And for years afterward, mysterious flowers would periodically appear on his grave.
Left by an unknown visitor in the early hours of the morning.
You have to assume it was Jo Thompson. She lived just down the street. She lived her entire life harboring a secret, refusing to speak about the case, taking whatever she knew to her grave.
She definitely took secrets with her.
But while she didn't leave a confession, her biology left a massive clue, didn't it?
It did. Jo Thompson had a son named Robin.
And Robin's timeline is interesting.
At the time of the Somerton Man's death in 1948, Robin was approximately 16 months old.
Okay.
Interestingly, Robin grew up to become a highly successful professional ballet dancer.
Let's hold on to that ballet dancer detail. That's wild given the calf muscles of the Somerton Man.
Exactly. As modern researchers began re-examining the case in the 21st century, armed with new medical knowledge, they noticed staggering anatomical similarities between the dead man and Robin Thompson.
This ties back to the autopsy oddities, the ears and the teeth.
Precisely. Let's look at the ear first. The Somerton Man possessed a rare anatomical anomaly called a larger cymba.
What's a cymba?
The human ear has a hollow bowl section. The upper part is the cymba, the lower part is the cavum.
Okay, got it.
In 99% of the Caucasian population, the cavum is larger.
But the Somerton Man?
The Somerton Man was in the 1% where the upper cymba is larger.
Okay, that's one rare trait.
Furthermore, dental records indicated the Somerton Man suffered from hypodontia,
Which is?
a rare genetic disorder where he was missing both of his lateral incisors, the teeth right next to the front teeth.
And Robin Thompson, the nurse's son, had both of these exact same genetic traits.
Yes. The statistical probability of a child randomly possessing both a larger cymba and lateral hypodontia by pure coincidence has been calculated by geneticists at between 1 in 10,000 and 1 in 20,000.
Meaning he wasn't just a stranger on a beach. He was the father.
The genetics strongly suggested that the Somerton Man was Robin's biological father.
This provides a deeply personal, grounded motive for him to be in Somerton Beach. He wasn't there to deliver a spy code. He was there to see the mother of his child.
The plot thickens exponentially when you look at it that way.
So Professor Derek Abbott from the University of Adelaide goes on an absolute crusade to solve this.
He really dedicated his life to it.
He realizes the circumstantial evidence is incredible, but the only way to get definitive, undeniable answers is DNA.
Professor Abbott campaigned for years to have the body exhumed from West Terrace Cemetery.
Did they let him?
He faced numerous legal blocks, bureaucratic hurdles, and pushback from authorities who didn't want to disturb a grave for historical curiosity.
Eventually they did, though.
Finally, in May 2021, the South Australian government granted permission. The remains of the Somerton Man were exhumed.
But parallel to the exhumation, Abbott and his team had already been working on a brilliant, deeply unorthodox alternative source of DNA.
The plaster death mask.
The one Detective Lawson shoved in Jo Thompson's face.
Yes. When Detective Lawson created the plaster cast of the man's head and shoulders in 1949, they applied wet plaster directly to his hair and skin.
And when they pulled it off?
When the hardened mask was pulled off, several strands of the man's hair were caught in the plaster and ripped right from his scalp.
And they were just stuck there.
These hairs remain embedded in the plaster cast, sitting on a shelf for over 70 years.
That is incredible foresight, even if it was completely accidental. But hair without the follicle root is notoriously difficult to get DNA from, right?
Historically, yes, very difficult. Standard nuclear DNA, the DNA that gives you your unique identity, combining your mother and father's genes, degrades relatively quickly and is heavily concentrated in the root.
So how do they do it?
Using advanced techniques developed only recently, scientists at the Australian Centre for Ancient DNA were able to extract mitochondrial DNA from these rootless hair shafts.
Explain mitochondrial DNA for us. Why does it survive when nuclear DNA fails?
Well, a cell only has one nucleus, which holds 2 copies of your nuclear DNA. But a single cell can contain hundreds or thousands of mitochondria, the power plants of the cell. Each mitochondrion has its own DNA.
So there's just way more of it to survive.
Because there are thousands of copies per cell, mitochondrial DNA is much more likely to survive degradation over decades. The catch is that mitochondrial DNA is inherited strictly from the mother.
So it doesn't identify you uniquely. It identifies your maternal bloodline.
Exactly. So they extract this maternal DNA.
What do they find?
They sequenced it and determined the man belonged to haplogroup H4A1A1A.
A haplogroup. What is that?
A haplogroup is essentially a genetic clan, a group of people who share a common ancestor deep in the past. This specific haplogroup is very rare, found in only about 1% of Europeans.
Armed with his genetic signature, Professor Abbott partnered with renowned genetic genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick.
And that's when things really took off.
Genetic genealogy. This is the exact same technology they used to catch the Golden State Killer. It is absolutely revolutionary for cold cases.
It has changed forensics entirely. Genetic genealogy involves taking the DNA markers they extracted and comparing them against massive public DNA databases.
The kinds of sites where people upload their DNA to find distant cousins or build their family trees.
Exactly. The algorithm looks for matching segments of DNA, measured in centimorgans, to find individuals who share a common ancestor with the unidentified body.
So you find a third cousin on a public database, and then you have to painstakingly build their family tree backward until you find the intersection point.
It is incredibly tedious work. Abbott and Fitzpatrick spent months constructing a sprawling family tree based on these DNA matches.
How big was the tree?
The tree ultimately involved over 4,000 individuals. They traced the maternal lineage back to the 19th century and then started building the branches forward.
Eliminating candidates as they went.
Eliminating candidates based on age, geographical location in 1948, and verified death records. Finally, in July 2022, they announced a name.
They found him.
The Somerton Man was officially identified as Carl Charles Webb.
Carl Webb. It gives me chills to finally say a name after talking about a ghost for an hour. Who was Carl Webb?
Carl Webb was born in Melbourne, Victoria in 1905. He was the youngest of 6 siblings. This means he was 43 years old at the time of his death on the beach.
And what did he do for a living?
Professionally, he was an electrical engineer and a highly skilled instrument maker.
Which completely explains the customized tools in the suitcase. The cut-down knife, the sharpened scissors.
An instrument maker would have the exact skills needed to modify tools for specific, delicate tasks.
Exactly. It all fits.
He was also a man of deep contrasts. He appreciated literature and was known to write his own poetry.
Which aligns perfectly with his possession of the esoteric rubaiyat.
Right. He was also known to enjoy betting heavily on horse races, which keeps the racing code theory alive for some.
It definitely keeps that door open.
But perhaps the most compelling piece of corroborating evidence, the thing that ties the physical evidence to the DNA, was found in his family tree.
What was it?
Carl Webb had a sister named Frida, and Frida was married to a man named Thomas Keene.
The tags. T. Keene on the tie, Keene on the laundry bag.
Precisely. It completely solves the mystery of the red herring name. The clothes in the suitcase likely belonged to his brother-in-law, Thomas Keene.
They were either hand-me-downs or he borrowed them.
He wasn't a spy leaving a false trail. He was just a guy wearing his brother-in-law's old coat.
It's so human. So what happened to him? Why did he disappear?
Carl Webb had separated from his wife Dorothy in 1947. She moved away, and he simply vanished from public records.
He just fell off the map.
He had no recorded date of death, no death certificate, no funeral, until he was found on the sand.
We finally have a name. Carl Webb. It is a monumental achievement for Professor Abbott, Colleen Fitzpatrick, and the power of genetic genealogy.
A huge scientific victory.
But you know what? It feels like putting a name tag on his shadow.
How do you mean?
Identifying him doesn't solve the mystery. It just gives the mystery a face. Knowing he was an electrical engineer from Melbourne doesn't explain how he ingested a phantom poison that left no trace and caused massive organ failure without the biological reflex of vomiting.
That's true. The toxicology is still unexplained.
It doesn't explain the unbreakable cryptographic code indented on the back of a rare book that materialized in a stranger's car 10 days before his death.
The code is still a mystery.
It doesn't explain why a witness saw a man carrying a body down the beach. And most importantly, it doesn't explain the sheer physical impossibility of his tranquil, undisturbed posture on that seawall.
The mechanics of his death are just as impossible today as they were in 1948.
They are.
That is the ultimate frustration of the Somerton Man case. The identification answers the who, but the why and the how remain deeply obscured by missing files and the limitations of historical evidence.
We just don't know the end of the story.
The structural erasure of his identity, even if we explain the tags away as sensory issues, combined with the encrypted poetry, still points to a highly calculated end.
Highly calculated.
Whether it was a tragic, meticulously choreographed suicide by a broken-hearted poet or a clinical termination by forces unknown, the truth remains locked in the past.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering thought. If you are as mind-blown by this DNA twist as we are, by the way, hit that subscribe button right now and join the Haunted Podcast family.
Join us for the next one.
But think about this. We know his name was Carl Webb. He was an engineer, a poet, a man with a broken marriage who likely went to Adelaide to seek out the mother of his child.
A real person with a real life.
But look at the totality of the circumstances. The missing autopsy files detailing catastrophic organ destruction. The unbreakable cipher that modern AI cannot crack. The bizarre timeline of the rare book.
It's too much to just write off.
These factors suggest something far beyond a standard cold case. Did Carl Webb simply die on that beach from a self-inflicted unrecorded illness? Or did the sheer weight of these anomalies imply something else?
Something we can't measure.
Did a spectral force, whether that force was Cold War espionage or something far less earthly, erase his history and leave behind a cryptic puzzle simply to mock the living?
It's entirely possible.
We have his name, but Somerton Beach is still holding on to a secret that forensic science was perhaps never meant to solve. A genuine paranormal impossibility wrapped in a tailored suit. Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.
Thanks for listening.
Think about Carl Webb tonight, and I encourage you, the next time you walk on a quiet beach as the sun goes down, wonder about the mysteries that still walk among us, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the tide to bring them in.